Looking to take you and your real estate business to the next level? You're in the right place. Laying foundations for real estate success? This is the No Fluff, No BS podcast about real estate for real estate agents and other industry professionals looking to up their game. Unfiltered short-form sales meetings, interviews with agents from every walk of life, and ramble sessions about everything real estate. Welcome to a new mindset. You are listening to RERAW. And now, introducing your host, James Hoff.
What's happening, real estate world? Always thankful to have you tuning in, making yourself better. I'm excited to be sitting with Ryan Howell today for our Wednesday interview. He's not a realtor, but he does work with agents every day and can offer some insights from multiple perspectives. We're going to be tapping into that for sure. We're about to get down to the raw side of the business. So, Ryan, you ready to go, my man?
Let's do it.
Awesome, brother. All right, folks. Well, my guest today, Ryan Howell, has a background in tech startups. He's an entrepreneur in his own right, currently the owner and founder of Coastline Home Services, a home inspection company out here on the West Coast. Also provides consultation for other companies in this space looking for growth hacks. He's kind of a smart dude, so we're excited to have him on here today. His position in the real estate industry gives us a chance to kind of see a vision from another angle, and I'm really happy to have him joining us today. So, Ryan, thanks for being here. Was hoping maybe you could fill in a couple of the gaps on that intro, and then, I don't know, share a little bit about what you got going outside of the working world.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for having me. Background, as you said, kind of tech startups right out of college. Kind of got right to it in DC, starting up a company that developed websites, did creative work, videography, photography, and all that kind of fun stuff. Also produced events for Congress and all kinds of fun people out there. Kind of transitioning, got into real estate a bit, got involved with a short sale, and kind of saw the power of flipping a property that's kind of low end on the spectrum, so real easy to afford, and then kind of got real easy to upgrade and kind of see how we could extract value from that. And that was kind of the genesis of like, oh, this real estate thing's kind of fun. And I had a technical background as well, so I kind of knew construction and that kind of thing, so it just kind of snowballed from there. So when I came out to the West Coast, which is where I'm from originally, that's the direction that we headed, but I wanted to do it different. I kind of saw like an industry home inspection, which most people probably don't even know that it exists. So I kind of wanted to take all the skills and kind of my leaning toward technology and leverage it in an industry that frankly is kind of old school.
Awesome. So what do you have going on in your personal life? How's life outside of the working world?
Well, life's pretty fun. Got 2 kids and a wife, so those people keep me very busy when I'm not working. How
old are the munchkins?
I've got a 4-year-old and a 1.5-year-old right now.
Ooh, he's on his toes.
Yep.
All right. So what? How do you kind of find that balance between, with kids that young? I mean, I got kids that young, so I understand that constant battle, and sometimes I think when they're that age, work feels more like a vacation, maybe. But no.
Yeah.
How do you
actually?
As a guy who's the founder of a company, you're running your own business, just like other maybe home inspectors, but also other real estate agents who are running their own show kind of thing. How are you finding the balance between being the CEO, the founder, the owner of this thing, and your personal life?
To be honest, there is no balance. I kind of think balance is like this like pipe dream that everybody's kind of going after. I actually think it's the wrong thing. So when I think of balance, I think of like, okay, I zoom out a little bit and look at it in terms of my total life and the life that I'm living, not hey, how many minutes am I spending here and sectioning out my day and all that kind of stuff and trying to balance out the day. Like, you're never going to create balance in your day if you think about it in terms of like a ledger. And that's kind of the downfall. I think that's where people have this problem where they're like, oh, I can't figure it out. Like, I just got to create more balance. And like, no, that's not what you need to do. You need to live your life and as hard as you possibly can. And it's not really easy. It's not like that just didn't come to me and like I just do it, but it's something that I strive for every day, is like, how can I live my life more intently and more intensely? And that's kind of where I feel that like sort of karma balance thing where if I'm doing the things that I love, if I'm making decisions to be around the types of people that I want to be around, inherently that includes my family. Like, I include them in all this stuff. And I love what I do. I mean, if you actually don't love what you do, then you've got some real big problems. And I would zoom out more and look at your whole life, because if you're not getting paid anything, in most cases, these startup situations are not sexy. If you knew what it took to actually create something, you probably wouldn't do it on the front end. So you just have to love it. And so I just kind of go in it and I say, hey, I just keep doing what I'm doing, not because I've been super successful at it, but because I've had a lot of failures in my life. But at the end of the day, I love everything that's kind of going on in my life. I love what I do, and that's how I focus on it, or at least that I create this like quote unquote balance, is that I just do those things that I'm drawn to and eliminate everything else.
Yeah, I like that. So you mentioned something that I wanted to tap into a little further, that you said if people knew what they were getting into, if they knew how much it was going to take to get a startup off the ground, they probably would never do it to begin with. And I'm just curious, I actually don't know the statistic for home inspectors. I know in real estate they say it's 80 to 85% of agents fail in their first 2 years. And I'm curious, is there a similar metric or something you can compare to on the home inspection side? Or home inspectors sometimes are working more for larger companies, they're not all doing startups?
Well, we're seeing a transition to a more professional industry. So there's a lot of consolidation that's happening in the industry, and that's a really fancy word for people selling out and being acquired and buying businesses and selling it. So that's a trend that is current and happening. You also have a number of franchises that are pretty outdated. I mean, I think the idea of a franchise is appealing to those maybe in Gen X, Gen Y, not nearly as appealing to millennials. So you're going to see a lot more focus on, at least in our industry, like on the marketing side, and like having companies that are a lot more professional in that sense. And you're going to see a step away from the one-man operators that are holding a flashlight and a clipboard. And that's the statistic that you're probably kind of trying to get at, is how many guys are just one-man shows that are maybe doing 10 inspections a month. And that's kind of like failure. I would call that failure in terms of like being a professional. Like you can't be a full-time home inspector and do that and expect to live. Like, this is not going to happen. So there's a huge amount of guys that are like that, but interestingly, a lot of those guys are also in retirement years. So we're going to have this massive shift in the next, certainly in the next 10 years. It's going to start in the next 5. We're going to see a vast majority, and I'm talking like more than 50% of the industry is old, and like they're not going to be able to work. You're not going to be able to get these guys into attics and under houses and into on top of roofs and stuff. They certainly can't pilot a drone. I mean, it's not knocking on these guys. It's just they're done. Like, this is a very labor intensive job, and that's why you don't have, although it's on another level, but you don't have like old guys lifting drywall and doing plastering for that same reason. There's just a physical limit there. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but essentially that failure rate, I kind of look at it as like the one-man shows and the non-professionals, and there's a huge amount of that right now, but it's also transitioning because of the age group. So
interesting.
Interesting. Yeah.
You mentioned something right in this last answer about part-time inspectors that are kind of, retiring. They can't live off of maybe that 10, 15 inspections a month kind of thing and make a legitimate income or be considered a professional in their own right. And I would imagine some of that is because the price of an inspection is, lesser, for example, than a real estate agent would make on commission. So it's a volume game. And that means in many ways you have to stand out more. And I'm just curious, do the part-time inspectors hurt the image of your business and your side of the industry in the same way that some agents feel that the part-time agent in retirement hurts realtors?
Absolutely.
And why is that? If they have, I'll tail the question, why is that if they have 30 years of experience, they're going into their retirement years and they feel like they want to run their business that way? Why do you find that detrimental? What hurts?
It hurts because it's not treated as a real business. It's treated as a hobby. It's like almost like a favor that they're doing, and with that, you kind of get everything that comes with it. So as an example, like the difference between a company like mine and how we run a business and what a single man operator that's been doing this for 30 years is doing, you're going to see by and large a lot more automation on our side. So we have a website that takes orders. We have online agreements that are all tied in electronically to our orders. We take online payments through a secure portal. Like everything is kind of up to modern standards in terms of what you would expect to do if you're ordering and paying for a service to be performed in much the same way that you order a car service through Lyft or Uber or something. Like you expect that, like obviously they're going to have Apple Pay and all this kind of thing, whereas now if you want to use that same example, juxtapose that to like the old school taxis, and we had this problem in DC where, you know, they were required to have a credit card machine, but like it never quote unquote worked. And so it was like always this cash game because they wanted the cash. And it's like, dude, like that doesn't help the image of taxis. And now you have like the new car services where it's like, this is a totally different opportunity that like things are completely different. So that's why they hurt the industry, is that they're in an old vehicle. Like we're a new opportunity with a new vehicle that gives home buyers a much better experience and a much different experience. It's not even the same thing.
So one of the most common questions I would say real estate agents ask in like Facebook groups or on social media in general, aside from does anyone have a pocket listing, or does anyone have a house for my buyer, whatever.
Sure, got one right here.
Yeah. I would say the biggest question aside from that that's asked is, does anybody have a contractor to solve this problem? So as a realtor myself who's constantly looking for trustworthy people who, quite frankly, I feel like often end up in jail or fall off the face of the earth. Like, all the good ones, it's like I can't keep them in there. He's like, oh yeah, no, Eric went to prison. Damn it, he was like the best handyman ever. But
there's a reason. Yeah.
What's your opinion, or can you give any insight or guidance to agents or anybody looking for a contractor after a home inspection to dial in some of those fixes? Where should we be turning to actually find trustworthy people so that we don't have to go to the half-ass referral that some other agent gave us or social media or whatever?
Dude, it's a tough. There's no easy answer to that, right? Because
you're just as hard for you as an inspector.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I've got guys that I know are legit. The problem becomes that the legitimate guys, frankly, they cost a lot of money, and because that's just the nature of it. And the problem becomes is that the agent wants, like, they have this really kind of weird position where they're like pitching themselves as like being an advocate and a fiduciary for their client. So like they're trying to do all this stuff to like fight for their client. And that's cool, like in negotiation, and that's a good thing. The problem is that bleeds onto every ancillary thing that comes up like this. So for example, if I go in and I'm like, hey, you got a Zinsco panel or FPE stab block panel, those are just, dude, you should just replace it. And yeah, it's $2-3 to do it. Well, the agent's coming in like, okay, I got to negotiate and fight for this and get it lower. Well, that's where those good guys that are like, hey, it's going to be $3, we're going to get it done, and it's going to be awesome. That's where they lose out. And so it's like, do you have a good referral? Yeah, but like, guess what? A house costs a lot of money to maintain. Just kind of getting back to this whole idea of how we service newer clients. So how do we service the newer buyers, rather? The people, like, what's the next step? Like, do you have a service plan? Do you spread these payments out? So it's like, do we create a service that can bill escrow and build it into the cost of the home without having like too much of an issue there? And I think that's ultimately kind of the direction that it's going, is to have that. But I mean, just to get back to your question about how do you find the legit guys, you find them because, well, you find them through your networks. I would definitely reach out to home inspectors that you know and trust.
Sure.
And if you don't know one of those, and start calling and like having coffee with them, because they can honestly be the best resources for you, because a lot of times they know how these guys work, or like they've seen their work and they're like, hey dude, I've seen this guy I've seen his plumbing, I've seen his electrical work, I've seen his, framing, and like this guy's super legit, especially the guys that have got some history. There's some knowledge there. So I would lean on the home inspector as a resource for that. But a lot of them are afraid to give it out as a referral because they're afraid of the liability. And so I would just approach it as like, hey, I'm like, just give me your best guys. Like, that's it. I'm not like, you're not officially sending this to me. I just want to know who you trust. And I would just do it that way. But just like anything else, like a loan officer, like you got to stay on top of that too. That's part of your job, is to make sure that if there's a problem with somebody that you're referring to, like an electrical contractor or whatever, and there's a problem with them, they get cut, like they're done, and make them aware of that. Like, hey, we want to use you for all this stuff, but if there's a problem, like you're out.
Fair enough. I mean, it sounds like it's just as tough for you to find those good guys too, and I think that's probably the biggest revolving door, is like quality contractors who are not only honest but actually show up for the job and like all that stuff. So that's a tough one. I want to get your opinion on this, or I want you to comment on the following statement. A lot of times real estate agents will go and they'll ask for references for a home inspector, and it's not uncommon to get an answer that's something like this. Well, this inspector is actually really good if you're a buyer because they're absolutely going to find everything, but if you represent the seller, you definitely want to stay away from that company. So I'm curious to know how you respond to that. What's going on in Ryan's brain when you hear that kind of a statement?
There's a lot of things going on that I'm not going to reveal, but
come on now.
Here's my approach to how referrals should get handled with home inspection, okay? You need to have, as an agent, the most objective, straightforward report possible that discloses as much as possible that's a material defect. So this is this big distinction that a lot of people miss, okay? This is like a big secret. Home inspectors, and the whole point of the home inspection contingency is to identify material defects, and then you as an agent need to assess whether or not that, depending on your position in the negotiation, what that means. Okay? So a scratch in the floor is not a material defect. The doors that it won't close properly, not material defects. Like, okay, yes, fine, like it's not maintained or whatever, but that's not something you can negotiate with, okay? So a lot of times what we'll have is people are like, well, you didn't talk about this in the inspection report, you didn't talk about that. Well, yeah, because that's not like a material defect. This isn't impeding the operation of like a major system, right?
Gotcha.
So, a lot of times we'll make recommendations about, maintenance and that kind of thing, but I would make sure you understand that like material defects are kind of what you're going for.
Why do you think that agents, in depending on which side of the deal you're on, why do you think so many agents are intimidated by getting an inspection that actually does show those types of defects? So what I try to do, at least with our reports, is the report itself is going to be as objective as possible. If we don't know the answer to something, we're obviously going to ask for somebody else to dig into it further. There's so much that we cannot see. I mean, we're going through thousands and thousands of components in a house in a couple of hours. Dude, I can't dig in, even though I could. I don't have the time to like dig into each thing and like figure it out. So I always, when there is that question, it's not a cop out to say, hey, get more evaluation done on this, because it is complex. The agents that I think I kind of know where you're going with this. Like there are some agents that just want everything to go super smooth, and There's agents that are just afraid that the inspection is going to ruin the deal.
Yeah, that's...
And I'm just curious why that becomes a point of intimidation, and if you have an opinion on...
because you have two things happening. You have one, like, the agent wants to close.
Yeah.
And, like, we all want that, ultimately. Like, the more deals that close for agents that refer me, the better, because that just means that their volume gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and I make more money ultimately. So that's like a big picture view.
Sure.
The second view, or the second thing that's going on, is the inspector ego. So this is kind of what, when we talk about the professionals versus the hobbyist and the enthusiasts have the time, and they have a lot of times an ego about what they know about a house, and they can use the home inspection to show off their knowledge. And so it's like an ego boost. They go, and it's like they're not really running like a professional company. They're just like a consultant that likes to go in and like tear a house apart. And so they're just picking at every little thing. They're not saying like material defect.
They're picking the scratch on the tile.
Yeah, they're saying like, oh, well, there's a scratch. Like, there's this. They didn't tie this in together properly. And it's like, okay, fine, but it's a cabinet, and like this house was built 30, 40 years ago. Like, who cares? Like, that's not an important thing. And so why agents are scared is because those guys have like given us a reputation as being the guys that like kill deals because, oh, they're just calling out things left and right. And even when we have a legitimate reason to call stuff out, then we get labeled as like, oh, well, they're trying to kill the deal. Well, sometimes, to be honest, I think agents need to think about this. The house may have committed suicide before we got there. You know, like it may not actually be our fault that there's all these things wrong. Like I've gone to houses where it's like, oh, they red tagged the furnace and that wasn't disclosed in the seller disclosures. Now you need to buy a $5,000-$6,000 furnace, and like everybody's freaking out at me. And I think it's just a transfer. It's like you have some guys that call every single little thing out and make a big deal out of it, that it's this huge deal, and then it gets transferred to me when I call out something that's like very blatantly obvious and we can't change it. Now the other part to that you have to think about is that most of the people that are getting scared about this stuff have two things going on in their head. One, they've watched way too many DIY network shows and way too many Mike Holmes episodes where, you know, they didn't find something. So if an inspector comes at them hard and says, oh my gosh, there's all this stuff, like you got to do all these things, that may just be like, hey, welcome to home ownership. Like there is 1,000 things to do. That's part of the deal. Like that's what you're signing up for. So it's like a lack of education. Whereas maybe the older generation were like, yeah, we know we're going to write a $5,000 check to have termite tending done in our place like every 10, 15 years. Like that's going to happen. And these other guys get freaked out that it hasn't happened yet, and they just think that the house is going to stay in its current state forever. So in other words, there's a lot going on there. So you've got like the inspector ego, you've got the agent ego because they want to close everything and they want to make sure everything's nice and smooth, and so they don't like anybody rocking the boat. But at the same time, like sometimes on an inspector side, there's no way to not rock the boat. Like, I'm sorry, there's probably like $20,000 worth of HVAC work needs to get done, and like the roof is on its last legs, and yeah, it doesn't rain here, but like still the roof is on its last legs. So our challenge as home inspectors is like, how do we fix that? And
you have the unpretty job. You're like the team on the field that you're the referee, right? You're
I mean, essentially, which is all right. But the cool thing is that, you know, we can change the rules a little bit.
Sure. In what way? Clarify that.
Well, there's kind of two ways that I use. One is the use of warranties with the inspection. So we are not Costco. So we can't take everything back. We can't write a policy that includes every single thing and will fix any problem and replace any issue.
Sure.
But what we can do is provide a parachute, a nice little like soft landing area for people that just bought a house. So what we do is we include a 90-day warranty on structural and mechanical items, and that's going to cover faucets breaking. I mean, like you move in and the air conditioner just breaks right away, and you're like, oh, now I got to pay a service fee for the guy to come out for the 1-year home warranty and all this stuff. Well, we take care of all that and reimburse all that money with our 90-day policy, and that's totally free to the home buyer. And the agents like it because it's like, okay, if there's something that just goes wrong, it's not that like, oh, you missed it, it's just something broke like right away, and it does happen pretty often, then there's coverage for that, and the homeowner doesn't have a bad taste in their mouth. The second thing that we see like nationally is these underground sewer line problems, and we provide coverage for that. We also provide coverage for the roof for 5 years to protect against leaks and stuff. So
you kind of come in with the solution.
So it's like we change the rules a little bit. We're like, okay, here's all the stuff that's wrong. Okay, cool. But the cool thing is like, go get that stuff fixed, and then if anything else happens, in this period of change, when there's this change of usage, especially with vacant houses, like we see it a lot where they move in and then just things start breaking. We've got coverage for that, so that at the least we've got some protection in there. And the cool thing, it doesn't cost anybody, well, it costs me money, but it doesn't cost anybody any extra money. It's just included in the inspection fee. And so the agents really like it, where it's like, okay, cool, now I'm not the one that has to like fix this problem. Go call the inspector, and they've got a warranty, and they've got a whole process that they can go through with that. The second thing that we're doing is flipping this whole equation on its head. So how weird is it really that we buy houses in the way that we do? So let's think about a similar kind of asset, like another expensive thing that we buy. You go buy a car. Like let's say you go buy a used BMW that's like a certified pre-owned BMW. Okay.
I see where you're going.
Okay. So what do they do with that car? Like that car comes off. It was new. Okay. They built it. They went over. Okay, everything's cool. And then somebody drove it and they turned it in. And now the dealer, what do? Do they just take the car from the person that's selling it and just put it on the lot as like consignment? Like, here it is. Like, I check it out.
Right. And
then do they wait for the next buyer of the car to come in and then offer a price on it and say, all right, I'll give you $40,000 for the 7 Series. Now, and then they say, okay, yeah, sure. And then they say, okay, and now that you've agreed on that price, we're going to now bring in a mechanic. And he's going to find a bunch of stuff that's wrong with it, and then we'll go ahead and renegotiate that price. Okay, who is this bad for? Everybody in this situation. That's basically how we deal with real estate right now. Is we take a property, we might wash it and like make it look nice, put a fresh coat of paint on it, but nobody actually knows the true condition of the house because nobody's gone through it until we're in escrow.
Right.
And do you know how many agents have texted me last week where they're like, we've got a 5-day escrow or a contingency period, we've got a 7-day contingency period, we've got to close in 14 days, can you help with, like, can you get this done? Okay, so now I got to rush and tweak my schedule and get this all worked out so that we can get the inspection done. Now, we do 24-hour turnaround. Typically, it's less than 12 hours, so we get inspection reports out right away compared to most guys that take a few days. But we get the report out, and now they have to deal with what's in that report, which could be a big negotiating item. There could be a furnace that does not work at all, and now they've got to schedule another guy to come in. So now we're all rushed to figure this out before we close on the deal, and everybody's stressed out, and they're all wondering like why'd the home inspector catch that? Well,
you're going down the road now of a pre-home or pre-listing inspection.
Yeah, why?
Right? Pre-escrow.
Why the hell didn't you get that inspected before it went on the market? And the answer is there's no real reason. It's just that's the way we always did it.
It's a really interesting point, actually, and this is something that I think a lot of agents could tap into. Is the idea of a pre-listing inspection, because as an agent myself, I mean, there's so much pressure that goes into presenting the house in like the most positive, beautiful light possible, right? And God forbid we take a home inspection and we highlight all the negatives before somebody writes an offer. But the other side of that coin, which has its own kind of beauty, is, hey, listen, like, love me for my faults. You know what I mean? Like, know what you're getting into beforehand. And I wonder if there's any percentage or statistics on this. I'll have to look into it. The number of deals that fall out of escrow without a pre-listing inspection versus the number of deals that fall out of escrow with a pre-listing inspection. And I would argue it's probably substantially less with the pre-listing inspection, because one of the single biggest reasons deals fall out of escrow is because of home inspections. Someone finds something that is surprising to them or unknown before. And by the way, just as surprising oftentimes to the seller as the buyer.
Yeah, so, they're like, oh, we didn't know that. Well, of course you didn't, because you don't look for this stuff. There's stuff that's happened in my house that I'm like, oh, geez, I didn't know that was happening. And, if I was selling the house, it wouldn't have looked very good. So, again, like the point here is that not that you need to say, oh, here are all my faults, but that you say, hey, we've had this checked out, and guess what? Now you've got time. You can be like, all right, let's go get a few bids on the air conditioning system. Right. Maybe it can be repaired. And then you just provide that documentation. You say, okay, here's what's wrong. We had this company out. They looked at it. third-party validation that everything's fine or it got repaired.
And by the way,
now
you get
you're
to do
like,
that without the stresses of when is your contingency up, because now you can say, hey, we're thinking of writing an offer in a couple of days, but we're kind of doing a little homework on the front end, based on the home inspection we got, trying to see what it's going to cost for X, Y, and Z to take place, so we can write a fair offer.
Okay, so there's another thing you got to think about here too, for the agent's point of view. Like a lot of times, I think for agents, they've got listing clients that have no idea how to comp, and their price expectations are insane. So there is this like gut check. Hey man, here are the comps, and oh, by the way, like, you're going to need to do this stuff so that you get your price right, because the minute you start negotiating with yourself, which is essentially what you do without all the knowledge, like if you don't have all the information behind what this transaction is going to look like in terms of the dollars that the buyer is going to expect and all that kind of thing, like what they're going to have to put up, if you don't have all that information, or at least a huge part of it, then you're negotiating with yourself and you're picking a price.
Absolutely.
And it's like, well, there could be a $4,000 or $5,000 swing, and in places like Orange County, it could be even higher. But and of course we're playing with bigger dollars. But in the rest of the country, where like $4,000 or $5,000 or $6,000 is like a big deal, even if it's going into a loan. So I would just bear that in mind. This is not just like little stuff.
Yeah, it gives everybody a chance on the front end to understand whether it's feasible or not. Because I mean, you to your point, you get a buyer into escrow, and they just may not be able to absorb. Seller may not want to pay for certain things, and buyers, based on their lending conditions, may not be able to. They could be at the top of their qualifications. They may not have the extra money to pay it out. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I want to, Ryan, I want to shift for a minute, and I want to start talking about, I want to talk about schedule. I think everything you talked about pre-home inspection is super valuable, and we should probably ramble about that one of these days. I want to jump into your schedule for a minute, because, and agents, I really want you to pay close attention to Ryan's answer here. I don't know what it's going to be, but this is relevant to home inspectors, to real estate agents. We all work in a business where we can't anticipate when the phone is going to ring. And sometimes we have a faster deal, a faster close, shorter contingencies, whatever it may be, or a buyer that all of a sudden calls out of the blue and says, hey man, like, I need you to drop everything. My dream home just came to market, and I know the whole world's going to want it. So we talked a little earlier about balance and how, there may not be any such thing as that perfect balance, but the reality is we all have to have a schedule that we keep to in some way, shape, or form. So how do you overall handle your schedule, and how do you overall protect your time, knowing that sometimes you get those urgent calls?
I have blocks which is not a new thing. It's nothing revolutionary, but I use blocks for scheduling periods that I know, hey, I can get an inspection or two done in this period of time, and so I allow agents to schedule, or home buyers or whoever it is, to schedule in those time blocks, and that would be like in the morning time and then in the afternoon. So typically 8 or 9 o'clock start time, depending on how large the property is for the first one, and then we'll have a 1 o'clock start time for the afternoon. And
do you have an app that you use for that, or do you have a special program?
Our order management system for all the inspections, we define all that, like when the standard start times are. Obviously, we flex if we really have to, but initially when I first started out, it was just like, whatever, like, when do you want me to come by? 11,
sure.
10:30, and that's just a recipe for disaster. I just learned to be a little bit more of a stickler on it, because at the end of the day, you're like defending your time, because your time is worth money, and if you don't defend it like that it is actual dollars going out the window, because it is, then you're just going to be owned by your schedule and by the whims of like whatever people want to create for you. The other part to that is you get a lot more respect when you tell somebody no, because this is the way you run your schedule.
Yeah, the power of no is huge.
And like, I'm dependent on real estate agents for the most part referring business my way, so it's kind of scary, and I'm sure that like agents have the same thing. Like, they've got referral partners, maybe lawyers, like divorce attorneys, like whatever, or even just their clients. even whether it's a referral or it's somebody you're working for, you have to put them in their lane. Like, when we were growing up, I don't know if you watch a lot of wrestling, but Dwayne Wade, The Rock, used to have an awesome saying, which was, know your role and shut your mouth. And you don't necessarily have to tell your clients to know their role and shut their mouth, but that's the attitude that you have to take. Because if you don't get them to know their role and know their place in this system, in this transaction, or whatever you're doing, however you want to call this, but if they don't know their place in it, and certainly if you don't know your place in it, like there may be some people out there that like you don't even understand where you are in this, but you are the conductor. Like, it's your job to lead.
So are you willing to lose a client to protect your schedule?
100.
Where do you draw that line?
I lost 2 jobs this weekend because, now, there are some arguments to this, but for me, right now, like, this is the way that I run stuff. Okay, the weekend, unless there is a extenuating circumstance that I make an exception for, I don't work on the weekend. In the sense that I don't take time away from my family, because I spend a lot of time away from my family during the week anyway, and I travel, and we're putting together some national programs, which is taking a lot of my time, and I'm just away from them. So the weekend is when I give to my wife and my kids to be there. So as I said, like, you can always make an exception, but the rule is don't bother me on the weekend. And you know what? My attitude is to some of these people that are like, oh, well, we work during the week. Well, so do I. And how often do you buy a house? So you got to figure it out. Like, what's your priority as the agent? Yeah. And as the buyer, I've got one right now that they say, oh, well, the sellers aren't being compliant. Like, can we do it next weekend or whatever? And you're trying to sell the house or not? Make time.
Right.
Like, this is not my job to accommodate you. Your problems don't become my emergencies. And it is a little bit tough to like do that sometimes because, again, like, you're looking at real money and there's fear there. But once you understand that setting a standard and telling people how the game is going to be played when they're dealing with you, and they understand that, they will respect you. And it may not be the first person. You may lose a few people over it. And I lost 2 deals this weekend over it. So that's like almost $1,000 for me.
But
gone.
you know what? You also attract the right people.
You want that's what I was gonna say is like the more you can repel people that don't respect you for that, the better. Like, you should celebrate. You should have a little bell. Like, people have like order bells. Like, oh, we got an order. I know a lot of guys that work in like sales do that. Yeah. You should have a little bell that you ring when somebody's just gets upset with you, or that you couldn't accommodate them and they huff and puff their way off, because. Ultimately, the best agents in the world and the best ones that I've ever worked with have that, and they don't flex for anybody unless they got a reason to, and they'll make the exception. But this is the way we work. This is how we roll. This is what we're doing. Either play by our game or get out. And
now, I don't have any money tied up in this, but I'm going to recommend a tool. You said your order management system. You can set all these rules up in there to help with your scheduling. I've recently integrated Calendly into my business, which has actually been really good. And agents, they have a free version of this. If you've not explored it, I highly recommend that you check it out. I'll put a link in the show notes on RERAW.com. But check it out. It's Calendly. They have paid versions as well, and you can do more customization you may find for your business. It's beneficial. But it does 2 things. Number 1, it helps you avoid the back and forth. When you have an actual appointment system in place, it helps you avoid the back and forth. Like, hey, how does Wednesday look at this time, or Thursday at that time? You literally just go, you know what, man, I'm just going to send you my availability on this link, and you pick what works for you, and I'll be there. The second thing it does is it creates the boundaries for you without having to have the conversation. So what apps like Calendly or any kind of system or program that allow people to schedule into your time, what it doesn't do is say, oh, little Johnny's got a soccer game on Saturday, so Ryan's not available, and James can't come out and show you the house because he's going out to dinner with his wife or whatever. What it does is the time's either available or it's not. And it doesn't say it's available or not available because you don't work on the weekends. It just, as far as your client's concerned, you don't take appointments you're just not going to double book your schedule. So as far as they're concerned, you just have other appointments. So I think that Ryan's given some really good insight into that. And, one thing that we could learn as agents that we probably don't do as much as we should, think about, whether it's a termite inspector or an appraiser or a home inspection, or there's all these different vendors and contractors that set very specific times. If you're an escrow officer and someone's coming in to sign loan docs, you schedule the time, right? Real estate agents so often don't abide by a schedule. They'll drop everything on a dime. They're so quick to say yes. They're so hungry and quote unquote desperate for the money. You can't be a slave to the money. And to Ryan's point, you are going to lose people every now and then, but there's a lot of power that comes by saying no and protecting your schedule and protecting your time and having respect for yourself. And I think when you start doing that, one of the things that Ryan is saying is you create a respect from the other side, and you're going to start naturally attracting the clients that care enough about you to work the way that they would like someone to work with them anyway. You push away the garbage, and look, you're not going to get everybody, right? I mean, some agents are going to say, no, man, like, I need the inspector that's going to jump on a dime. And you're like, hey, no worries. Like, there's definitely a place for that. I'm just not your inspector. I can refer you to 10 other people who will do that. It ain't me, though.
You can... The point on our side would be to create a company that can do that. So you have, so you don't work on the weekends, but you got one guy that's like, dude, I'm good, whatever.
Right.
So you offer that, and like, you should always be available to the extent possible. But for you yourself, that's where you need to draw the line, because even the guys that are like, dude, I'll do Sunday. They like, for me, like, if they come to work for me and they're going to do all the weekend inspections, then that's fine. But they've chosen that, like, that's their thing. Like, Absolutely. They will do that. You just need to define what that is, and then just
there's no wrong way. You just set your boundary.
You just can't. You just can't go back on it and just be wishy-washy on people.
I like that a lot. So Ryan, we're going to start wrapping up here in the next couple of minutes, but I wanted to ask you a few more questions, and we can dig a little bit on these. But you obviously work with a lot of real estate agents from a different angle, and so I'm curious, from your perspective, as someone who's not an actual agent, what common mistakes do you see real estate agents making?
One is not knowing basic stuff about our business, which is kind of funny to me because they're so tightly intertwined. And it's not so much a mistake, I guess, as it is like a deficiency. So the mistake is that there aren't enough agents that have reached out to home inspectors and other professionals to grab coffee or grab lunch and do a deep dive on their business and like how everything works. And there's great benefit to that because from our side, we've got a lot of knowledge to share. And we're not going to teach you how to be a home inspector. Like, you don't want to do that. But the more you understand about the businesses that you're referring and like how everything works, and that kind of thing, asking questions on home inspections. Like, I love it when agents are like, hey, I never knew about like X, Y, or Z. And maybe they just feel more comfortable asking me because I'm not as threatening as like an older guy that's just all grumpy about it. But yeah, just to explore your referral businesses so that you have a wide knowledge base, because that's a mistake, because there's going to be questions that come up, and I've had agents that like rely on me for answering questions that they could certainly answer if they knew some basics about like how everything works. The other thing that I see that they mess up on, at least it just doesn't look good, is when they make the client call me and they get kind of wishy-washy on referrals. So the point here is that you should, as an agent, you should have like your dream team together. You need to know who's going to like serve your clients to the highest degree possible. And if you don't know that, and your answer to that is, oh, well, here's a list of 3 home inspectors because somebody told you that that was going to lower your liability. Right. Please know this. There is not one case in the entire country where a judge has said, okay, this client is suing you for negligence, but because you put 3 names down, we're just going to waive everything. Like, that's not how this works. And if you think that that's going to save you, then you have some other problems. And that's all right, because we all have a lot of problems. But the point that I'm making is that make sure you know who you're referring, that you're referring the right person. And if you don't know that, figure out why you don't know that and know it. You need to understand that. The same thing is true for lenders and all that. It goes back to my point. Like, you need to set a standard for how you operate, and then surround yourself with vendors and other people and business partners, whatever you want to call them, that operate at the same level so that essentially everybody's on the same page. I had an agent reach out to me recently who said, hey, we love working with you. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, thanks for saying that. But like, why? And he said, because you're so high touch, and that's exactly how we work. Like, we have email reminders that go out. We email out all of our agreements. We send text messages. Like, we are just like,
experience.
Here's what's happening all the time. Because there's so much happening in escrow that you need all this stuff. You need to be at the top of their inbox. And just that alone is like why they refer us. I'm like, dude, that took me like 4 hours on a Sunday to set up that system. And like, to me, it's no big deal, but they identify with it. So you need to, that may not be you, but I would argue that should be you, that you're a high touch and all that. So find people that are the same thing and let them know, say, hey, we love working with you, and this is really important to us. And you can infer that, like, if it becomes less important to you, then you're out. Like, I'm not going to refer you if you don't operate on my level. And you don't have to be mean about it, but I'd make it very clear.
There's like 15 value bombs you just dropped there, man. Like, you know what? The last thing you said about, following up and high touch is such a big deal. I mean, how often can you, on the other side of the device you're listening on, how often can you think of a time when a client got upset because they just wanted more communication, because they didn't know exactly where things stood in their deal? Constant communication and that high touch is like super important. And what's really funny is we as agents expect it in many ways from all of our vendors, and we forget that our clients oftentimes, and if they don't, they should expect it from us. So that's a good opportunity for you to do some self-reflection. What kind of technology do you think is underused in the real estate industry that agents and inspectors alike should be more aware of and potentially using?
I feel like I'm going to go with this one.
Take it away.
Recently, my take on this is funnels. If you don't know what a funnel is or how it works or the concepts behind it, not just the mechanics of how it works on a web page, but if you don't know how a funnel works, you need to start diving into that. There's no reason that you shouldn't be, because some of the most successful companies in the world, and I'm talking real estate developers, I'm talking real estate agents, mortgage brokers and bankers, people that sell supplements, people that sell training, information, like funnels are the way that the world is going. And if you're spending anything more than $100 a month, which might even be high, on a website, I would seriously think about your game.
Yeah.
And I would honestly, if I were you, think about it this way. Have you gone to your website recently? Because I do this all the time, because I get they schedule, and we market to agents that are on the listing side because we want their business too. So when we send out the reminders, like we send it to their email and all that. So sometimes I'll have to hunt for that stuff. And we put it into our system, and they're in our database, and it's really cool. So the thing is that when I go to find their stuff, a lot of times, it's hard to find, which is super annoying. Like, if you're an agent and I can't find all of your personal contact information, and I realize you guys get bombarded by people, but I should be able to find everything very easily. The top agents I can.
But
so
Ryan, if you just fill out the form with all of your personal info, then we'll give it to you.
Yeah, I'm not filling out no form. Get the forms off of your website. Stop it. It's not helping anybody. Nobody's like sitting there like, yeah, I'm sure I'll be proven wrong. Nobody's sitting there like, oh, I've got a $2.4 million house I want to sell. Let me just fill out this impersonal form here on this website that looks like every other agent's website in the country. No one is different. There's not one website, even the high-end guy, like all these big guys in Newport, they do crazy marketing stuff. Like, their stuff is awesome. I watch the movies about the houses that they're selling because the films are that good, where it's like, oh my God, I want that life. I want that life. Like, I want that girl. You know what I mean? So anyway, the point is that even those guys, they have better content, and they're doing things a little bit differently. So that's part of the reason why they're so successful. And they dump an incredible amount of coin in that. Like, you have no idea. If you don't know what video production costs, like, you have no idea what they put into that stuff. And that's why they're successful, is because they're willing to risk that kind of stuff. But everybody else, so if you're not on that level, if you're not playing at that level, then you are basically in the trough. Like, you're doing the same thing that every other agent in the country is doing. And if you're going to tell me that your unique selling point is that you service all your clients and that you're very high touch and that you're fiduciary and that you are a really good negotiator, I will show you a list of 1,000 people minimum in about 10 minutes or less that are just like that have those exact same qualifications. So here's like my challenge to you and in our industry as well, but you need to be doing things differently, and one of the ways that you can do that is to create a funnel. And the whole point of a funnel is to be able to walk somebody through all the things that do actually make you unique in a systematic way online, so that you create belief in your potential client for being your client.
Absolutely.
And if you're not creating belief, and this is a big, like, people honestly pay thousands and thousands of dollars to learn these concepts. Like, I'm not kidding, because I've been one of them. So if you're not creating belief for people in what you do and your services and why you're truly unique, then you're not going to sell them, not at the level that you need to. And if you're comfortable with where you are right now, like, I would reconsider being in real estate, because you should always be swimming. Like, there's a reason sharks don't stop swimming. That's why they're the apex predators, because they don't stop swimming. Okay? So I think about that. Get into it. I don't need to pitch you on any one reason or one thing, but I mean, like, for our website, it's a funnel. Like, it takes people through the process, shows what they could do easily. It makes it really easy for them to schedule inspections.
Yep.
And then
I'm going to put a link to your website in the show notes so people can look at it too, but it's coastlinehs.com, stands for Coastline Home Services, and it's an absolutely beautiful site. I don't want to discredit you for the technique that went into creating this through ClickFunnels, but I'll tell you right now, folks, I mean, you can make a slightly lesser version that's still more appealing than most websites that are out there. Ryan's done an exceptional job on it, and it really does. I mean, I'm actually redesigning my website because of the funnel systems that are out there right now, and it is a big-time game changer.
I've spoken with a lot of people in real estate, particularly on the mortgage side, because they're trying to get the leads for themselves and not from you anymore. Like, don't think that they're not going away. And home inspectors too, to a large degree, like, they're trying to get their own leads now. So real estate agents are becoming less and less the center of the universe, and, like, I'm sorry, but, like, that's just happening. So I've talked to a lot of people that have used tons of different systems, and when I show them ClickFunnels, it's like, oh, dude, it's like that other. I got a text the other day. They're like, oh, this is just like what I was trying out, except it's 1,000 times better. And I was like, I know it's better. I just didn't think it was like that dramatic. And they're like, oh yeah, it does this and that, and like, there's stuff that I didn't even realize. But I think what James and I will probably do is, like, we'll put together like a couple funnels that just have, like, some basic stuff built out and some templates, so you kind of get what we're doing. And then, James, I'm sure you can post a link there, and then we can push those funnels out to you, and you just sign up for a free trial and, like, just check it out. It's insanely
really
cool.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. Thanks for that, Ryan. That's a huge value. So I got two final questions for you, and then maybe we'll get some closing thoughts. You can tell our guests how they can get a hold of you, and I promise we'll set you free. So the last two questions. So based on your experience, I'm going to combine them together. What advice do you have for rookie home inspectors, and what advice do you have for the rookie real estate agents out there?
Rookie home inspectors, go find the company that you want to be like. If you don't even know, like, who that might be in your local area, look nationally and figure out, like, where you're going. You always have to start with the end in mind. So, like, what are you building? Are you just want to be a single man operator? If so, you might want to look into some licensing from companies like Ampro Inspections out of Colorado Springs. They put together all the marketing stuff for you. Like, they have an insane system that, as far as I've seen, nobody in home inspection has ever built it in terms of growth, like, by a long shot, by like 2 or 3 times more growth than any other system I've ever seen. So I'd go out and reach out to them, like, super affordable way to do it, and believe me, like, you'll save money. Get licensed, like, through them to be able to use their trademark and all their marketing systems. It works super, super well, and it's all put together. The second thing is, like, if you want to become bigger and, like, do something be a multi-inspector firm. And even the multi-inspectors, they can do licensing too. Like you guys get it. But I look into like a franchise system. AmPro does the same kind of thing, where they actually have like a legit franchise where like you get paid real money instead of like $50,000 a year. But go check out what those guys are doing and take notes. Even a company like Elite Inspection Group, which is in our area. I mean, they're a competitor to me. They got like 65 inspectors, largest home inspection company in the country. They're in mastermind groups and stuff. Like, go hang out with them. They'll tell you what they do. Like, it's not a secret. This industry is very giving. So I would get involved in different groups and stay away from people that are just on forums all day long. So that's kind of like my summary advice for agents that are just getting started. Start meeting with, before you start getting clients, and I mean this, don't get clients until you do this. Start meeting with all your service providers. Understand the entire soup to nuts transaction. I talk to so many agents that don't even know what the home inspection contingency is. They don't even know. They're like, okay, so what is it? Like, what do we have to do? You need to know that. You need to know that like the back of your hand, and you need to know who provides it and kind of the bigger players in your area. Sit down with them, have coffee with them, and the people that you connect with, that are going to like fulfill your end goal. Make sure that you connect with them and that you understand that how they're going to provide service to you and the relationship that you'll develop, because they're gonna save your butt probably in a lot of ways that you don't even realize. So I would start the relationship on a good note. And the second thing is, if you have a bad experience, and this is for experienced agents too, if you have a bad experience with anybody, a home inspector, mortgage guy, I would take them out to lunch. This seems really counterintuitive, right? Most people don't
say something to me.
No, most people don't screw up and like don't feel bad about it. Okay, like there have been agents that, hey, like we've dropped the ball on something. Like, I'm not infallible. This has happened. Okay, and what I wish that had happened and that didn't. So this is what I would take back is I would have gone out to lunch with them, or I wish they would have taken me out to lunch so that we could just hash it out. Even if it's just like, hey, like I'm not happy right now. Like, I'm going a different direction. At least just hash out what it is so that you get that exit interview. Like, okay, cool. Like, I guess I lost a referral partner for now, because you're going to remarket to them and you're going to get them again. But you hash it out with them and just give them the feedback, because nobody's going to get better in real estate or life without constructive, real criticism on things that they can fix in their business or in their personal life, whatever it is. Like, it might be a personal issue that's affecting their business life, and if you don't bring it to light in a nice way, like just be constructive about it. Be like, hey, this is a problem. Like, I think you should fix it because like I care about you because you're human. And if you approach things in that way, you won't believe the amount of respect that you will instantly get from people. And I would encourage you to do that. If you have negative experiences, reach out and be more like a coach than like somebody who's saying, oh, forget you, I'm not using you ever again. So you can put them out of your life, and that's fine, in your business, but give them some constructive, just good exit interview criticism on the way out.
I like it. Well, we've been sitting with Ryan Howell today on an amazing interview, offering some great perspective to not only to home inspectors, but also to real estate agents from a unique angle, which is really, really great. So I hope you guys found some great value in that. Ryan talked today a lot about protecting your time, create your dream team, surround yourself with the right people. Don't be afraid to lose business to maintain the integrity of your goals and your vision and your time and everything that you have working for you. Ryan, I really appreciate you being here with us today. It means a whole heck of a lot. Could you let our listeners know how they can find you, how they can get a hold of you or keep up with you online, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, so best way is just follow me on Instagram. It's the RT Howell, and you can link to it show notes. But yeah, just keep up with me on Instagram. I like to post random stuff, my kids, fun stuff I found on inspections, and that's probably the best way. You can always DM me there. Keeps it nice and simple.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again for being here. Folks, don't forget to head over to RERAW.com. Check out the show notes. All of the good stuff is in there. The tips, the tricks, the resources, all the fun is right in front of you. We've got timestamp show notes so you can hop to different parts of the episode that were intriguing to you. So, again, that's RERAW.com, and you'll just search for Ryan's episode. If you want a mock-up of the funnels that Ryan's talking about, send me an email, and in the title, make sure that you put, I want your funnels. And Ryan and I will piece something together over the next short while here that we can send your way to give you some inspiration and help you get started. Thanks so much for tuning in today. You guys were listening to a Wednesday interview with Ryan Howell from Coastline Home Services, and we'll see you guys at the next one. Take care.
Hey everyone, it's your host James from RERAW. Did you know that one of the most important parts of running your real estate business like a business is having a budget, tracking your expenses, and knowing and understanding where your money is actually going? But if you're like me, getting bogged down with the budget can be frustrating and taxing on the time you should be spending generating leads and working with your clients. This is why I use RealtyZam. RealtyZam is the best accounting software for real estate agents, hands down. And no joke, I've personally used this product for over 3 years. Not only do I love it, but my CPA thanks me every tax season. It works great on the computer, or they've got an awesome app that you can download right to your smartphone. Customize your expense categories, store receipts, track income and expenses, and assign them to specific transactions so you know your actual margins. RealtyZam is amazing, intuitive, and efficient. See your results by category, month, quarter, or annually, and track your progress from year to year. And the best part, not only can I give you a free trial, but when you do start paying for this software, you can actually get it for under $10 a month. And even that is tax deductible. So get your numbers straight and stop letting the accounting be a distraction when you can take it all in stride. Visit RERAW.com/ZAM and get a 30-day free trial, no credit card required. Again, that's RERAW.com/ZAM. That's RERAW.com/ZAM.